We are about to commemorate the holiday of Sukkot, Tabernacles in English. We commemorate that because our ancestors, after they left Egypt, were in the desert for 40 years before they arrived to the Promised Land. And this festivity commemorates a fact that God either sent clouds of glory to protect us from nature, and at the same time to show us the direction in which we have to go in the desert. Or maybe they were actually Sukkot. They were actually little huts, like this one. This one has walls, it has a roof. And the most important part is really the roof that has to be covered by something that grows from the ground but that has been cut off. In other words, you can't build a sukkah under a tree that is immersed in the ground. What you need is something that you have cut off. In other words, you're not taking advantage of something that exists, but you do it on purpose. You built this because you want to remember the fact that God protected us during 40 years in the desert. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. One fact that becomes very clear, that in order to fulfill with the obligation of living in a sukkah during 8 days of this festivity, means that your entire body has to be in this hut. You can't be half outside and half inside. You can't have your head outside and the rest of your body inside. You should be totally inside the sukkah. Of course, if there are many people and some people have part of their body outside of the sukkah, you have to ask a rabbi to find out really what is the law. But to begin with, we have to be totally under the sukkah. That tells us a very important lesson, that when you do something, you should do it with your whole body, you should do it with your arms, you should do it with your head, you should do it with your physical might, and you should also do it with your emotional strength. Because the human being is one whole entity. You should not divide it really into different parts. But I mentioned to you already that some of our rabbis say that Sukkot really is represented by the clouds of glory that protected our ancestors in the desert and that showed them the way to the Promised Land. What about the other one that says that Sukkah is really a very fragile type of structure that Bedouins even build today, and they've built for hundreds of years? Maybe it shows the faith that the Jewish people had in the promise of God. This Sukkah is, of course, a defenseless type of structure. Yet, our ancestors were willing to follow the promise of God of residing in a promised land, which afterwards they would conquer and be there for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the Jewish people has returned, of course, as we know today, with the existence of the new state of Israel. You know, it also represents the fact that even though we may build homes that are made out of brick and mortar, our homes are really fragile. And many a time we are even asked to leave our homes, like our ancestors were asked to leave France, England, and of course the most famous expulsion of the Jews was in Spain in 1492. A very important year, because then is when the Americas were discovered, or as some people want to say, that was the year of the encounter of two different civilizations, the American civilization and the European civilization. But for the Jewish people, in addition to that, it is also a day to remember of the tragedy of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. Obviously, that their things were taken away. They couldn't take their homes with them. They took some clothing, who knows what they were able to take out, but certainly not the homes they had built. And that is a very important lesson, that notwithstanding the fact that we build homes of mortar, of steel, of iron, of what have you, actually we are really temporary inhabitants in those homes. We are temporary inhabitants on this earth. Even society itself has to be conscious of the fact that we are not here on a permanent basis. In fact, the fact that we feel uncertainty may be also the mother of all inventions, of progress. When you feel very sure, you have no need to try new things. But when you don't know what the tomorrow will bring to you, when you don't know what the future has in store for you, You have to take different kind of precautions. You have to prepare yourself for uncertainty. So in a sense, the message of Sukkot is God will protect us, but we human beings have to be prepared for different uncertainties in this world. I would like to wish you and your family a very happy Sukkot. We have just celebrated Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the most important days in the Jewish calendar, and now we are celebrating a joy of festivity, preparing ourselves for the coming year, and we hope that the spirit of these holidays, the Teshuvah of Yom Kippur, the Shofar of Rosh Hashanah, and the Sukkah, which means the protection of God, accompany us for the rest of the year.